students had student supports available. And so he was able to get to that no cost, low cost goal that I always try to find for students when I can. Now, I'm a VP of my division. I have a lot of work that I have to do. This is not actually part of my job, but it's my passion. And I think that a lot of times where we all work want fast, quick results. And we know, if we know anything about this kind of work, that's not always possible. These are long game investments in our community members, and it takes time. And every single system has its own set of rules, regulations, updates, changes. So it can sometimes be a real mire. Now, on top of that, I picture this student from another country, English not the first language. I reached out to our college and explained what was going on, provided all the information, and then they sent a link to the FAFSA. So just pause for a second. Think about how much fun a FAFSA is when you're an English speaker from this country. It's not fun. So sending someone a link, although that was not intended to be harmful or lacking in support, it actually was, right? So that part of it became difficult, obviously. I mean, I hate filling out FAFSA forms. I do them all the time, but I don't like them. And they're very difficult for students. When I was 37 and went back to college, I thought I had to provide my parents' information. So I did, right? So just therein lies how difficult it can be. But when you can do that for students, you're creating a much less stressful avenue for them to accomplish the things that they want and need to accomplish for themselves. So what we try to do, and a lot of, I'm sure all of you, any of you who have grants going on in your divisions, wherever you work, there's a lot of talk about supports. There's a lot of talk and there's a lot of things that include those supports in them. And we did that by design, and I'm really happy that SUNY in particular has been putting a lot of those types of supports in there. So it also takes kind of a view of like all the things that are out there. And sometimes that can be really difficult because sometimes some of these supports cannot be advertised, like WIOA cannot be advertised. And I don't know if you know what WIOA is, but it's Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act monies that are set in every county in New York State. They have a capital region has $4,000 toward anything that's going to get someone, if they qualify, toward a better career, improve their career. If they're underemployed, unemployed, on unemployment insurance in that moment, and just need to get into a different field. I think also they would have to make less than $25 an hour, regardless of whether they're married or not, or in a domestic partnership of any kind. So again, those rules, they're not advertised and they're not known. So one of the things that I think is really important in order to do this work is to try to find the people that know who has the goodies for our students, not just the FAFSA and TAP. And I will say this, as I said in my blurb on the conference documents, student debt has exceeded credit card debt by a huge margin. I'm having fun paying a $38,000 one myself. I don't love it, but I'm paying it. And I needed to do that so that I could get in this place in my life. So was it worth it? Yeah, but I really resent the fact that at this point in my life, I still have to pay that, right? And thinking of our students, they have less resources often than I do, and the rest of you do. Why would we saddle them with that immediately when there's all these other options first? So what I recommend is try to figure out what resources are there internally and externally, state, federal, county, and go from there first. Apprenticeship funds, for example, are no harm funds. Look for the no harm funds first. Let that student have the opportunity to test themselves to see if their life and their desire for further education match and if it will work, because a lot of times people want to do it, but they are on a wing and a prayer kind of hoping that the childcare stuff stays intact, that the kid doesn't get sick that's at school and you don't have to stop and go pick them up. I mean, our students, just like all of us, have complicated lives and they're doing the best that they can. But, you know, we need to protect them from some of these harmful funds that can hurt them for the rest of their lives. We've all heard these stories of students who try to come back to us and they have a library bill or they have some old bill that they didn't pay of $100 or $1,000 or whatever. No matter where the decimal point is in that figure, sometimes that might as well be $1 million, right? And we didn't intend to harm the student by doing that, right? There are our rules, our policies, but inadvertently, they do terrible harm. So that can preclude someone from going to your school or any school, depending on where that loan or that debt or that bill sits. So we can't necessarily do anything. Well, we can do certain things to help those students with good faith payments, for example. I think right now it's like 9 months of good faith payments. That's 9 months. A lot, you can have a baby in 9 months. A lot can change in 9 months. So when that student is ready, you want to be able to provide them an opportunity right then, if you can. So my best advice and my ethical practice of that would be check in, ask some questions, maybe have a vetting document at your college where you ask, are you a veteran? You know, lots of times I just met a woman the other day who said, yes, I'm 100% disabled from being a veteran. I have 100% disability. And I said, did you know that you could get full tuition to go to school? And did you know your children can as well? She said, no, I didn't know that. And how many of our students, how many of our community members or us until we were in the industry, did we know that there were all of these other resources, right? So my suggestion here is find out what those resources are, put together some sort of vetting document that goes across your campus that asks those questions, because you don't know who your student is going to run into. Who are their first people that they meet, that they see? If everyone has a similar document of questions, then maybe you can get at those questions and say, oh, did you know you might qualify for XYZ? And the more that we can do that, the more success our students will have, because they're not worried about all of these other things. I don't know about you, but when I went back to school at 37, I felt like my life was a house of cards. And at any moment, something was going to happen and everything was just going to go to hell in a handbasket that day, right? So it's important to remember what it felt like for you, because I think sometimes we forget as we're in our career and we move forward, we're just not thinking about that anymore. Remember those feelings, remember that context. So when the student that comes in that's like you or has a similar situation to you, you can walk through these things and maybe see if there's some ways that you can relieve some of those debts, some of those issues, some of those problems that they might run into, and especially in the funding area. Really important. Let me pause just for a second. Does anybody have any questions on what I've said so far?
I was literally typing a question in the chat.
Thank you, Christine. Hello. Yes, we are actually working on one right now, because thankfully through, I'm an Empire State graduate. I did grad school through Empire State College and was able to get PLA. So we're working on our PLA policy at the college, and included in that work will be a vetting document, which I am so excited about. I thought I'd be in the grave before we'd have PLA at my college, I have to be honest. And I'm so thrilled that we're at this place. So we are working on a vetting document, and I would be happy when that's completed to share that with Ashley, who can then share it out with the rest of you in this collective. I think that's super, super important for especially our academic advisors to have that at the ready. But I think also for anybody at the college, just have that there. Anybody who's a front desk person that a student might see, have it ready. So I will get that to you as soon as I can.
Can I ask you a quick follow-up question? I know Jennifer has a question too. Do you all have a system like EAB Navigate or something that can ask those questions electronically if for students who don't come to campus?
We don't. I do have some electronic mechanisms, but as we know, students don't read a lot of the things that they're sent.
Yeah.
So I think there are some electronic questions and like even drop-down menus when you apply that say,
Okay,
are you a veteran or things like that. So there are those mechanisms in place, but you can't underestimate the person-to-person interaction.
completely agree.
I think that's helpful, but I think it should be a redundancy. There should be lots
Perfect.
of recipients of this kind of work. So thank you
Thank
for. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, so I am actually faculty, but my institution is getting a lot of pressure, like every private post-secondary institution is, because of the revision of 9010. Like, it's killing us. And we're trying to be creative and think outside the box and all the stupid cliches. But can you clarify what you said by no harm funds? What does
So
that
when I
mean?
say no harm funds, I mean FAFSA and TAP. They're harmful. They can be. I try to do other things first if I can. We are a lead for apprenticeship, so we have that luxury here at SUNY Schenectady. So with the SUNY apprenticeship grant, there's $5,000 of tuition funds to cover related instruction that they would do sponsored by their company. So we try to use those first. WIOA is usually what's called a funding of last resort. So for example, and this is very important, guys, very important on this, WIOA. It's across the state. If a student is just about done with their certificate, their 2-year degree, and they just need 2 or 3 classes, but they've run out of money, WIOA can intervene. WIOA can come in and pay the remainder or the rest to help them finish up to, for us in Capital Region, $4,000. There's some areas of the state that are more, and there's some that are less, but that's one area too. We've been working very closely with our foundation, and we've been creating specific scholarship funds to support students who have unmet need. We just were able to put together a $6,000 scholarship for specific to immigrants. We have another one that we did in the cannabis industry, oddly enough, with a company that's working to become a dispensary in the region, and they gave us a $6,000 scholarship. So really what we're trying to do, especially from the workforce community education side of things, we're trying to get as many resources as we can that kind of fill the gap. My husband just got home, so my dog is very excited right now. I apologize. Bones are dropping. It's very exciting. So what we try to do is make sure that students are aware. You know, there's all these things that are there, but they're not aware of them. So we try to do any way that we can, no harm funds. So it's a lot, and I think it has to be like a 50-prong approach where because students are all different. They come from different groups, different ages, different needs. So we try to we've also been adding in special funds like emergency funds in our grants so that we have those available, because then that's very open funding. A lot of times navigation of difficult funding takes time and the students need it right now. And so by the time you can get that money, they've already moved on, right? So I like to we're trying to gather funding that can help support students right away. That's money in-house. With certain parameters, of course, right? We're not just throwing it out money like Oprah, although I wish I could. You get money and you get money and you get money. But I think there needs to be several layers of different funds, because students don't come to us knowing what they want to do sometimes. They don't know what counts. They don't know what counts from what they did before. They have shame attached to the fact that they didn't finish this before. They hate math or they hate literature. They're not thinking about how are there these other funds that can help me. So that's pretty much what we're trying to do, is to just fill in the gap with some no harm funds if we can, whenever we can, so that we can get them finished without debt. Does that make sense? Great. Any other questions?
I put one in the chat.
Oh,
Sarah,
you did. Sorry.
Yeah, well, like does WIO, when you said if a student is just like 2 courses or something short, like WIO could be tapped, but does WIO have any limits on levels of course taking? Like what do we all have to know about that?
So with WIOA, it's about the amount and being almost done in the case that I'm talking about. Like if I have exhausted all of my financial aid and I just have 2 classes left, it doesn't matter what those classes are. It just matters that it points to a certificate and or a degree. So they are all about industry training, but like if you're taking a very general degree, like I hate to say this, but basket weaving, people always say that, stuff like that. If you're taking something that doesn't directly point to a job, they might have some pushback. But usually, if you're doing your degree because your plan is to do XYZ job in this sector, they're going to be very supportive of that. I would like to, so I will tell you, when the pandemic first started, I worked with our IR team and our VPAA, and I said, there's this money and there's all these students that almost finished their degree, but stopped out. And we grabbed data from 3 years prior. Do you know I had 9 people that called out of 600, 2 were recipients, 2. So there's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe because it was too early in the pandemic, people didn't want to go back to school, they were too nervous, whatever. I can understand that. However, I think every day I could say, did you know there's WIOA funds? And people at the school would go, there are, tell me more, what is that? So I think it's important, again, the redundancy of, guys, every time I'm at a Senate meeting, for example, I'm like, did you know that WIOA is available? Did you know what it is? Just so that people know what it is, and hopefully somebody will come to me when, if that happens. So the parameters are, make sure it's to something that's a viable career. That's all. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks so much. That's
You're
really
welcome.
helpful. And actually, just to share, there's been like a direct message behind the scenes, me anyway, about is Credentials You Go going to consider doing a playbook on finance issues? And I'm thinking, well, we probably should, if only to collect examples. Maybe there's not a lot of examples, but the extent to which we could find examples from folks in the network, that would probably be good to share information. So we can talk about this more tomorrow probably, but I think that's going to be maybe something really important emerging.
Yes, I think so too. And I want to share one other story, just kind of for you guys to remember. So we had one of our grants had really great support money embedded in. We're doing a direct support professional group with our local ARC, and we brought the students in. Come to find out of the 8 students, 3 had debts with our college. It hadn't gone to the Fed yet, thank God. It was with us. And normally we wouldn't have been able to do anything for them. We would have had to say, sorry, guys, can't help you. We were able to pay off $8,000 of debt just like that, because we had the money in-house and it fit in with the grant parameters. Can you imagine the impact of what that can do for a student? That was going to go to the Fed at some point and be a long-term bill. That could lead to bankruptcy. That could lead to all other sorts of terrible consequences. The thought of someone coming to us in hope and us inadvertently causing harm makes me ill. I don't like to even think about that. Students don't come to us understanding. If you think about it, you can get a student loan without ever talking to a human soul. Think about that. That's crazy. And that's a lot of money that comes in from those too often students who have never had the opportunity to have that kind of money in their hands before. And to me, we have got to do better by our students and by ourselves, because it causes so much harm. And what I think, when I was working at SUNY Empire, I remember hearing the statistic about the millions, or like the large number of New Yorkers that have some credits but no degree. Often the reason they can't finish that degree is they have old debt and they cannot do anything about it. And I'm sorry, making good faith payments, even if it's $5 for 9 months, that's not really helpful. And that's not going to, it's in our best interest to do better, right? Because we are the users of the services that our students learn in community. They're our phlebotomists, our EKG operators. They are our doctors, lawyers, nurses, teachers. It's in our best interest that we get more people in the collective. We've got to do something better about how we fund students and how we help them navigate systems. It has to be, every system has to have its rules and regulations, but how many of our students have any idea about what that is? And my student from Afghanistan, he said to me, you know what, Sarah, when I was in Afghanistan, $200 was nothing to me. Nothing. I had a good job. I had a nice home. And now I'm killing for 200. Like I would kill for $200. Like I just don't have the money I used to have. And I'm trying to help him get to a place where he can be a productive member of society and with a gainful wage. He's a lovely person, wonderful person to be in our country. And we just throw up all these barriers. And why? Like why is that? Why are we doing that? So if we can do better with that, and even if nothing else, if you leave this thinking, hey, there's WIOA dollars, hey, there's some apprenticeship money, hey, let me talk to my foundation at the college, I will be thrilled. And certainly if you have other questions, yes, 40.4 million Americans now with debt and no degree. Isn't that awful? We can do better than that. We have to do better than that, right? So I have my email. You guys can, I'm sure, get my email. I can put it in the chat as well. If you have questions, yes, we need students too, right? Students aren't coming as much as we want. They're coming though. They are. It's ticking up for us a little bit. I think it is across the country. Thank God. But yeah, if you have questions on this is like 15 years of experience here figuring this stuff out. And it took me a long time to figure it out. I'd want to have a mind meld with all of you to just give you the information. And if things come up down the line, if you're having difficulty knowing where to go, ask me. I might not know, but I might be able to point you in the right direction. And it is my hope that there will be more funds available as we do our grants, as we do other things, that we're really focused on having these unrestricted funds to help people when they need it, because the immediacy of those needs, especially when you think about the childcare issues that are going on here, and they lose their childcare and they're trying to figure something out and maybe just need a boost. My gosh, if we could continue to do those types of things, I would be really, really happy about that. Other reports?